Call the meeting order.
Did you correct that?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thought you broke that though.
Pardon me?
Thought you broke it.
Amy, would you take the roll, please?
Okay. Mr. Anise?
Present?
Mr. Bova?
Here.
Mr. Brodsky?
Here.
Mr. Coyne?
Present.
Mr. D'Elia? Mr. Ford?
Here.
Mr. Haskell? Mr. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Miola?
Present.
Mr. Santa Croce?
Here.
And Ms. Sesney?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, you've all had the minutes of the meeting. Any additions or corrections? If not, someone would like to make a motion?
I move.
Moved by Mark and seconded by Frank. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstaining? The motion carried. All right. The first item is a resolution for award of contract to work on the raw water main improvements.
Yep.
And I think Dan is gonna take that.
I will. Yep.
Sure.
We discussed this last meeting. This is a rebid of the original bid. This is the Mohawk Valley requires the installation of approximately 5,200 linear feet of 54-inch raw water main and valves up near the Hinckley Reservoir to supply more raw water into our plant. We bid this project and received 3 bids. The low bid was Carver Construction, and in the amount of $9,434,145. And Carver Construction, we know personally, they did our phase 1 raw water improvement project that just was completed a few months ago. So this resolution is recommending to the board that Carver Construction be awarded the contract.
You know, if I can just add also, at the price that Dan just stated, the bid price, we do have funds on hand from the last bond issue, so we're able to complete this project. Initially, we thought because of price increases that this could conceivably be closer to $13 million, and we'd have to build potentially $3 million into the next bond issue to finish phase 2. As it turns out, thankfully, there is cash on hand, and we will not have to bond further to finish this project. So just want to make sure that you all understand where it's being paid from. And the proceeds are from our last bond issue.
Any questions of Dan or?
Yeah, one.
Go ahead, Frank.
The last bond issue was for the same stuff?
I'm sorry?
The last bond issue, when you took out the loan,
Yeah.
it was for the light kind stuff. In other words, you can't float a bond for, according to municipal law, we can't float bonds for different things unless you pay it off. Isn't that the protocol that you guys got? You can float bonds for anything you want?
No, the way our OS or our official statement is written, it allows us to do those changes, not very specific.
There's a general description of the project
Okay.
that goes out on the official statement to prospective bond buyers.
Oh, for the bond, okay.
And so projects that we know, we list specifically.
Okay.
Generally, there's a little category for some miscellaneous stuff that's a little bit flexible. But this particular project was listed in the last bond issue as being funded $10 million for to do this phase.
It was included on the last.
It was included in the description of the sources and uses.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
And this was approved by the capital project.
Yes, it was approved by the Capital Projects Committee. Somebody want to move the motion? Frank? Any further discussion? Anybody want to second the motion? Bruce? Thank you. All right, we have another item. This time it's Sandra who will.
You should vote on it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's a good idea. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
That's better.
I'm making a fact. It's a faster meeting when you do it this way. All right, the next item deals with the collective bargaining unit. And Sandra, I believe you're on this.
Yes, so we currently have the title of meter service person. That position changes out meters. Sometimes there's meters in confined spaces. where the requirements under law require you to have a confined space entrance attendant, and there has to be a supervisor.
Mhm.
The meter service persons were never required to be supervisors. They were only the entrance attendants, and we usually borrowed a supervisor from water utility or the maintenance, the maintenance yard. If they needed a supervisor, we would be shorting another crew. We would be shorting the water utility by doing that, and it wasn't great for planning. We decided that in order to get a meter service person to want to be the supervisor, we would create a higher level title called senior meter service person. They do the exact same job. However, they are the supervisor in the whole. We decided that for that supervisor in the whole, we would give them $1 extra an hour on top of the regular meter service person rate. That seemed pretty reasonable. So we wouldn't have to pull someone else, from a crew, from water utility, whatnot, and they would have their own dedicated person that would be able to do this. This is not creating another position. This is just adding another title, and it's putting it into the unit. The title itself has already been created. It was created by civil service. The allocation already happened. Pat set the salary. And we are just looking to add it into the unit because it is collective bargaining unit work. So this is really just a formality. We could not put it in the unit because it's their work. They would argue that that's our unit work. So this is just to put the title in the unit so that people can continue paying dues and not have, any interruption in their union status.
Any questions?
Was someone in mind for this job, or is it gonna be posted?
It was
It was already
Oh, was?
posted.
Okay.
Civil service, got to take test?
At this time, this is a competitive class tested position. Meter service person is a non-competitive class position. We will be requesting to also put this in the non-competitive class, and the state more than likely would place it in that class anyway because it is the exact same position that they've deemed non-testable. It just requires an additional certification. So, but currently listed as competitive class, yes. Do I think that a test will come out? No, I don't.
Any other questions or discussion? Someone want to move this? Richard? Second,
Second.
Carl? All in favor?
Oh, aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, Jim?
Yeah.
The finance report.
Okay. In your binder is the monthly financial report for the month of August, which is the 8th month of the year. Everyone have it? Okay. Consumption has recovered a little bit. If you recall, back in July, we were down 1.2%. We're now only down just under, right around 0.5%, almost breaking even for the year compared to the previous year. We're still down in revenues overall, budget or billed revenues, a little over $300,000. Cash flow, we're down pretty significantly. The main reason is we're putting out money for FEMA projects, and we're slowly getting that money back. So we're putting out a lot more money than getting back. So we're down several $100,000 for the year. So hopefully soon we'll get a lot of that money back. We're putting in for it. It's just they're taking a long time.
As usual, right?
As usual, yes. And we'll talk more about this in our budget workshop. So any questions?
Does everybody know that the sewer for the city went up? They raised it?
Yeah, finally? They haven't told us that yet.
I just want you guys to know because they were speaking about the board at the last meeting, the mayor was. Well, you guys can watch it.
About this board?
It's still, yeah.
Right.
That he spoke to, I think he said he spoke to the board, maybe, I don't know. But they raised the city water sewage.
City sewer rate.
City sewer rate. So you guys know. So I don't know.
No, we haven't officially been told that.
No, you
County
weren't.
will do the
Well,
same thing
so-
after the
Wow.
fact.
The real quickly, the background on that is that
Sorry to digress. I apologize.
they started at the beginning of the fiscal year wanting to do a sewer rate increase to generate more sewer revenue. Unfortunately, the rate they used and based the increase on wasn't the current rate. It was something that had gotten passed years earlier. So they added on a percentage to a lower sewer rate. And when they thought they were done, it was still lower than the current rate. So we told them that you didn't really do a sewer rate increase. You actually did a net decrease. So we then did the calculations for them based on the current sewer rates and said, if you, that's the percentage you want, here's what the rate structure would look like. We sent that down to the city clerk's office, I don't know, maybe in June, and then hadn't heard a thing back. So we were waiting to see what they were gonna do. It's
Last council meeting date.
nice that we hear that happen.
Yes, I'm sorry that you guys didn't get, it was like 2 weeks.
Well, we need to get it because we need to, yeah, I don't think they've officially, Jim, have they sent anything to you?
No, so the next step is they'll send something up to Jim and he'll program it into the billing program and then we'll begin billing at the higher rate. But to date, we haven't been notified, so thank you. We'll be on the lookout for it.
You're welcome, Jim.
We'll be on the lookout.
The only comment I want to make is the same one I've made the last few meetings. That there's going to be some significant requests that are absolutely necessary, and we're continuing to have a reduction in use, which will affect rates. My concern is that it not simply be, as we've done for a while now, an across-the-board increase in order to basically use a simple annual increase in order to accommodate the changes that are occurring in our system. And one of the biggest impact areas of the change is the past, current, and future capital project needs and its impact on the cost of services and what people pay. One of the things that I've asked the staff to look at are changes in how things might be applied, how payments might be applied to recognize the changes. The changes in reduction doesn't mean there's a change in cost. That's the first thing, and that will affect how we calculate rates and where the rates are calculated, but also the continuous improvements necessary to maintain a system of an aging system of 700 miles of pipe. You've heard this before. We can't have a 700-year replacement schedule for our pipes. It's just, you just can't do that. So to look at how capital is billed and how operating is billed, and to recognize that. So you're going to hear some proposals this year and in future years related to how we charge, because it's not going to get any easier. I just wanted to say that it is a reflection. If you look at, and it's been concerning me since the beginning of the year when I said, look at the annual. And yes, we may be able to get a little bit more money in the budget, but it's the result of a across-the-board increase and not recognizing the percentage of change related to capital versus operating, for example. So we really do need to make some changes. It'll be a change over time. I don't think we do everything the first year, but there will be proposals coming that we're going to have to consider that will address that impact. Future cannot hold same numbers every year in consumption. And we've been going down slightly over time. And our costs increased significantly. So just keep that in mind as we talk about budget after this meeting and in the future, because it's apparently we don't have the resources like the county had when they spent $300 million on sewers. But our other issue is if the region is going to attract new industry that looks for water as a resource, as an asset to be able to do new industry, there's going to be coming a time, and I keep predicting it's being within the next 5 to 10 years, that we're not going to be able to manage it and accept that improvement in industry, because we're going to need to make some major changes in our system, which thankfully the staff and the board has approved. This phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 you've heard about over time is a reaction to the future. And unfortunately, it's not the whole reaction. There's a bigger dollar figure that may come about if we do attract a larger business. So we do need to look at how we charge rates, how much that is, and recognizing that we can't replace our pipes over 700 years. So,
Well put. Well put. You have to face the reality of the circumstance pretty soon. All right. Any other comments? Pat, I think you,
So the next agenda item, there's actually several moving parts here, so I would appreciate if you'd indulge me for a couple minutes. I'll try to be as succinct as I can. However, there's a couple of things here that all kind of blend together. One is that this past Friday, we did have a capital improvements committee meeting. Ellis, who chairs that committee, wasn't able to be here. And then just as you can see tonight, he wasn't able to be here. He had an emergency at home and called me about 2 o'clock and said he couldn't get here. So our vice chair, formerly chair, is taking over today. I'll speak for the committee only because Ellis isn't here, but Bruce, who was here, Carl, Vince, and Denny, feel free to jump in if you want to supplement what I'm saying. So the crux of the capital committee was really twofold. One is that we have an opportunity to begin the next phase of the raw water line project, which is that transmission line that goes from Hinkley Dam a couple of miles down to our treatment plant. We just awarded the construction for phase 2 of that, which is a little over 5,000 feet, almost a mile of pipe. Phase 3 was going to be a much larger piece. Dan broke it into 2 chunks, or maybe that was done before you came. I can't remember. You did that?
I did.
You did that. Yeah. Okay. So by having a smaller bite-sized chunk for phase 3, we're now calling 3A, we did apply for some financial assistance from EFC, the Environmental Facilities Corp., which is a lending institution of the state government, and they've tentatively awarded a $3 million grant towards that. Phase 3A, as Dan broke it down, is a roughly $8.5 million. So the state will give us $3 million towards that. We have to borrow the matching funds, which is the $5.5 million. On top of that, the state would like a commitment by the end of this month, essentially by the end of the week, that in fact we're going to do that. So part and parcel of that whole discussion was the fact that if the board is going to approve going ahead with phase 3A, and the committee supported that recommendation, and I'll just dovetail for a quick second. If you don't know this, it's important. When we had our lawsuit with the state and we had a settlement agreement between us and the New York State Canal Corporation, there was a requirement in there that until we finish phase 2 of that raw water line project, they had to maintain a minimum elevation in the reservoir at all times. Because if it gets too low, with our smaller size pipes, we can't get enough water. So to protect the water supply, they said you can't let the elevation get below 1,195 feet above sea level. Once phase 2 of this project is completed, however, according to the settlement agreement, that minimum elevation requirement goes away. And what happens is, in order for them to meet that elevation, they often have to let less out of the dam than they're supposed to, according to the operating diagram, which tells them day to day how much to let out. When they do that, the downstream private power company, Brookfield Power, since 2013, now gets paid for lost revenue if they receive less water than the diagram says. Never happened like that for 100 years. Now that's the way it works. So the Canal Corp, the consequence is, whenever they had to slow the flows down to hold the water level for us, they had to cut pretty big checks to Brookfield Power. So one thing we know for sure is that when that minimum elevation requirement goes away, they're not going to be very inclined to want to under release according to the diagram and cut those checks. They're going to take the reservoir down lower. So we should expect in the future that 1195 safeguard level is going to be drawn down pretty regularly in the next bunch of years as we go ahead. So the phase 3A project, as Dan broke it down, will allow us to install more of the larger pipe, and every bit of linear feet we install gives us greater ability to get water at lower water levels. And the calculations for phase 3A will give us a few extra feet. If we need to get, say, 28 million gallons a day, for example, to meet a peak demand day, with phase 3A being done, we'll be able to go several feet lower and still be able to get that than without that. We think that that's very good insurance policy, number one. Number two, the fact that the state has given us $3 million out of an $8.5 million project isn't something that we ought to just dismiss casually, because we could reapply for it later, but there's no guarantee we'll ever get it. So the committee supported the concept of including phase 3A, which meant that we have to commit to bonding and tell EFC that in order to get that grant locked in. So the next part of the meeting was, if we're going to initiate the bonding, then what else do we want to throw into the bond issue based on our capital improvement program and the list of projects that Dan brought to the meeting. And so that list includes a lot of other work, water main replacements, things of that nature, tank work, variety of things. The committee supported the entire list. So based on the committee's recommendation, the bond size would be $17.5 million. Based on that, we were able to calculate projected debt service. About 2/3 of that is included, as you'll hear in the budget workshop if you stay after the meeting, in next year's budget already. A little bit is left over to ramp up into the second year, so we don't have a real big jump of $1 million in debt service all in 1 year. That being said, however, the process from here on in, if this board approves this now and agrees, is that I generate a letter that goes to the other board, the Water Finance Authority. They're the ones that actually initiate the bonding and acquire the funds. So if you're not familiar with that mechanism, there are two boards that are part of the overall organization. This main operating board here, and then the 5-member Water Finance Authority board. And there's actually a contract between the two boards that dictates what each board's responsibilities are. And it's the responsibility of the Water Finance Authority to acquire the funds. So once this board approves a spending plan for the next piece of the capital improvement program, which is what's before you tonight, then if it's approved, typically in the past, you would just authorize me by motion to sign that letter, and then we get the finance authority together and they proceed to put the bond issue together, and Jim and I and others spend a whole lot of time with them. The only difference between that process and tonight is that because EFC is looking for an actual board resolution committing to obtaining the matching funds for Phase 3A project, there is not only the letter, the request letter to the finance authority, but also a resolution that says we're committing to bonding and we're going to go get the matching funds. So it's just a little bit of an extra step, but that's everything that came out of the capital committee meeting on Friday, and that's what's here before you tonight. So between the board members that were here at the meeting, if you want to add anything, please feel welcome to.
Okay, nice explanation, but anybody have a question? Frank?
You're gonna band first for the first year? No, you're just gonna go right to the bond?
Correct.
Do you have any idea how, we got 30 year?
It could be 20, we've gone 20 years in the past, it could be 30 years.
Because of the pipes last, usually the longevity of the pipes would probably be 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
Spread it out?
Longer than that, yeah.
All right, so you got the longevity of the pipes,
Yeah.
30-year max.
Yep.
Do you have any idea how much the yearly payment might be?
Yes.
Is this something that's gonna hurt our budget for next year, or we're gonna have to?
It would have to be in
It's included in the budget projection right now, which you'll hear about. But essentially, right now, the debt service that we've included for next year related to this bond, if we approve it, is $860,000.
And amend what you're saying a little bit, because that 15% that were required, when you add it all together, is equivalent to, the 900 and something thousand that would be about what the debt service would be for the.
It's about 2.5 percentage points on a rate increase to support this bond at this size if we go out for that.
2.5%.
About a 2.5%
For this
rate
little
increase for this particular bond, correct?
which is not the full bonding for the total.
Right. So next year's budget, we'd have about 1% more. We'd have to ratchet it up to include the rest of the debt service. More than likely, what we would do is initiate the bonding if the board approves it. Do the bonding this fall, probably close around the holiday time, right around December or January. And then typically we make a principal payment in April and interest payment in October. Actually, principal and interest in April, right?
Yeah.
And then interest only in October. So what we would do is we would just structure the debt service so that the amount we've plugged in is what we'd pay for next year. And you can do that by either delaying the first principal payment, building a little bit of the interest payment into the bond, which we typically don't do if we can avoid it. But we can structure the debt service to match what we're including in the budget.
Ideally, wrap it around the existing debt. I just did straight line just to get a number, but that's what we put in the budget. It could be a little more. It could be it's going to be a little less.
Any debt relief from last year to this year?
No.
Nothing?
No, unfortunately, no. No, it's exactly the same.
Okay.
It's an addition.
So rule of thumb, for every $1 million we borrow, it's about $65,000 of debt service. So you can calculate if it's a $10 million bond, you're looking at $650,000.
We have a little less in the budget, but it's because I went over 30 years. Use 4% generally. It's probably going to go in less, so therefore there might be a little less.
Right. But most of what's on this project list really has a 75 to 100 year life cycle at least. Probably longer.
100. Yeah, it's at least over 30. So
Probably, way over 30. So we would look at it both ways. The underwriters will calculate it as a 20-year bond and a 30-year bond, and then we'll see how much, it's obviously lower annual payments at 30, but you end up with more interest at the end. So, we try to weigh that out, and the finance authority comes up with a recommendation that fits the budget that we've programmed.
Any other discussion or questions? Someone want to move the
So
resolution?
which we,
You give them the resolution right to go for the,
Pardon me?
you're giving them the right to bond for it, to send a letter in, right? This is for the letter.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I would think that if the board votes on a resolution, that would probably also authorize the letter to go with it.
All right, motion to move then, Mr. Vincent, Chairman.
Yes.
I motion to move for him to advise the letter, yes.
Anyone second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstention? Okay, the motion passed. Pat, it's your turn.
Okay.
You just,
Okay, so my report is very brief, because the budget's gonna be really most time consuming tonight, and that's where most of our time has been over the last bunch of weeks. I do want to say, however, that, we do have a guest tonight. I want to introduce everybody. This is Timothy Beck. Timothy is our new safety officer. He's been with us about 6 weeks now, and just came on board. Our former, safety officer left on his own accord for health reasons back, last fall, but Timothy came on board. Sandra did a great job recruiting and convincing him to leave his current employment, or rather his previous employment, and coming on board. And he's off to a flying start. And I left it on my desk. Son of a gun. I had a certificate I was going to show everybody, but it comes from our workers' comp carrier, which is called PERMA, which is the Public Employer Risk Management Association. PERMA came down here Friday and bought lunch for our whole maintenance section. My door's locked, if that's where you're going. Sorry. I thought I brought it with me. It was in my book, and I forgot my book. That's why I'm cheating on Denny's. Nevertheless, they gave us a certificate of achievement because we have gone since January 1st of this year with no reportable accidents or incidents.
Not hard.
So, yeah, not real hard. So we've definitely made a significant improvement in our safety training, our safety out in the field. Our record is greatly improved. So Tim's coming in at a time where he's going to have to make sure we stay there.
Yeah, I know. Anything after this?
Big challenge and a high bar to meet. But Sandra worked pretty closely with PERMA. They wanted to do something in recognition for our employees. So Friday, while we were here having a capital improvement meeting, she and others were down at the yard with PERMA and celebrating the great performance of the workforce. And the way that our workers' comp premium is calculated is on a rolling basis. So they take five-year chunks, I think, right? 5 years at a time. So I think the year that'll drop off this time was actually a very bad year. So we're hoping for maybe not necessarily a reduction in premium, but hopefully, only a modest increase because it's been jumping pretty rapidly over the years as the state retirement, state workers' comp laws change and premiums go up. But we're very proud of the workforce in the maintenance department. Dan's been working closely with those guys to make sure they're following good safety procedures in the field. And Tim is coming up to speed in a hurry. So I expect
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I expect very good things for the future. So welcome, Tim, and congratulations on great job, Sandra, as well, playing a part in that. The other thing I want to mention is that you've heard this before, but by October 16th, we are due to hand in what's known as a lead service line inventory. We've done a lot of work on that. We recently hired Barton and Judas Engineering, and they're subbing out some of that, and we're doing some predictive modeling. And so we had even a little bit of a brief meeting this morning as far as a status check. Jim was here, Dan was here, Ann was here, and others. Bless you, whoever sneezed. It looks like things are on track. All the data has been transferred. It's been put into predictive modeling, and we're going to come up with, we think, a pretty good report that's going to meet all the requirements of the health department. It's going to be a work in progress for several years. It's not something you do once and leave it. We have to continually update it as we do more and more investigation work. But we are very confident that we're going to be handing something in within 3 weeks. That's going to be a pretty good reflection of an awful lot of hard work that was done by not only our own maintenance folks, but also a contracting company that we hired with another vacuum excavation truck. as well as self-reporting. The board, you may recall, authorized a credit, $25 credit on people's bills if they can help us with that. That whole program is underway. The IT department has scoured through our files. We're biting off small chunks at a time and sending letters out, asking for people to upload stuff. So we got one response already, and the letters only went out like Thursday last week. So hopefully we'll get some good stuff. But we do expect to meet that deadline right on time, and we think the health department will think it's a pretty good report. So other than that, I'll be quiet unless there's any questions. As I said, the bulk of my time has been, fortunately spent with Jim and others on the budget, and Geraldine and Scott. So we'll deal with that afterwards.
Go ahead.
I just want to, we're going to be hearing a lot about lead. We have heard a lot about lead. This could be $100 million impact plus in this community for something that's not a problem. It's a problem for the politicians in Washington. It's exactly what it started with Flint, and it has spread nationwide, notwithstanding the fact that our community has controlled the problem for years and years and will continue to. We are very likely going to be forced to spend $100, $110, $125 million to solve a problem that's not there.
Yeah.
We're not going to deal with it this year, probably not deal with it next year. At some point, we're going to have to make some decisions which nobody will be happy with. Nobody. Not just us, but communities like us throughout the nation.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be one of the biggest additional costs on homeowners nationwide. And it has nothing to do with taxes. It has all to do with political jury rigging. And I can't tell you how upset this makes me. That we're going to, not we, I mean, the water system will ultimately be blamed for imposing costs that are just untenable to any normal person.
Agreed.
But
I'm sorry.
Is there any way to send, like, I don't know, little test packages to the homes and let them send it to us?
Nothing that's acceptable by the EPA or the state health department,
How do you know?
because they've already said, they specified very
They want to
clearly.
test it themselves?
Pardon?
They want to test the house themselves?
No. They've specified what kind of evidence is acceptable to them to determine if it's lead or it's not lead. So,
So, in other words, how can we actually prove that the recipient of that water coming out of that faucet has lead in it unless we test it?
oh, we do testing. I'm sorry. I must have misunderstood your question. No, we do regular testing. But
You
the
do.
testing protocol for years, it was, we only had to do 50 homes every 3 years. And the 90th percentile couldn't be above 15 parts per billion.
Okay.
We were in compliance with that since the filter plant opened in 1993. Just recently, they lowered the 15 parts per billion down to 10 parts per billion. Then, for some unknown reason, they told us earlier this year we had to do 100 homes every 6 months. So it went from 50 homes every 3 years to 100 every 6 months. We had a heck of a time finding 100 people that were willing to let us in and do samples. Now they've backed off and they said we have to do 100 homes a year. So now every year we got to do 100 homes.
Okay.
We're going to have to stay under 10 parts per billion. And they've also told us we have to start adding phosphates to the water, which is going to continue to buffer the water and coat the pipes, keep that level down. So the big mystery, which I think Bruce hit on the head, is if we can meet that challenge with some additives in the water that are basically harmless. It's like adding soda ash or baking soda in your swimming pool.
Okay.
That's kind of the equivalent of what we're
That
doing.
takes the lead out?
No, what it does is it neutralizes the water a little bit, so it's less corrosive.
Okay.
The problem is that when you're asleep at night, you don't use any water. The water in your service line sits there for 8 hours.
Yeah.
It can start to absorb a little bit of lead over time. Years ago, before any of this treatment process was put in place, the lead levels were, up at 140 parts per billion.
People are normal.
Yeah. So with the chemical additives, though, eventually what it does is it puts a thin layer of coating inside the pipe.
Okay.
So the water is not in constant contact with the pipe, but it also makes the water a lot less corrosive. So it doesn't absorb, it doesn't break down the lead and leach it into the water. So the chemical treatment has kept us below the levels that would determine to be acceptable by a myriad of health agencies and scientific studies. Nevertheless, as a result of Flint, Michigan, as Bruce indicated, now all of a sudden, all bets are off. No letters acceptable, period, the end, get it all out and rip the pipes out of the ground, even though we've proven chemically we can control it. And the bottom line is, anybody that's concerned, just run your faucet for 60 seconds in the morning or flush the toilet, and you move that piece out of that pipe and down the drain, then you're getting fresh water from the main, and there's absolutely nothing to worry about at that point. So there's a real easy fix for it without spending, $80, $100 million.
We're gonna try to identify all the homes with the lead pipes going to the meter. Because
Yeah,
that's
coming out of the
right. Well,
basement.
try to pay for the replacement, and who pays for the replacement of 5,000 homes?
Are you gonna go right to, because you're not responsible from the shut off to the house?
Not yet.
It looks like
We will be, but right today we're not. But tomorrow we might be. And here's the thing, okay? So Phil and I were both away last week at a statewide water conference in White Plains, and the Bureau of Public Water Supply chief was there, who Phil and I both know, and she was asked a ton of questions, and basically a lot of her answers said, "We won't know until October 16th, because that coincidentally is also the date, or not coincidence, when EPA is going to finish the revision of the new lead and copper rule." So the questions of who's responsible from the curb into the house is unknown at this point. Are we gonna have to pay for it? Do we make them pay for it? Is there gonna be external money? We don't really know. The only thing we do know is that if they don't want one half being replaced and the other side not being replaced.
so we can replace our half, but the other half has got to be replaced somehow.
Right. And if they don't want to do theirs right now, we shouldn't touch ours.
Right. There's
So,
no sense digging
right.
it up without-
But if they decide to do theirs voluntarily, we have to come in as fast as we can to do our side of it. And if somehow we end up having to do our side because there's a leak, then we got to supply them with all kinds of in-house filtration until their side is done. So there's a lot of details in these things, and they're not all crystal clear yet. We're told October 16th is when EPA is going to promulgate the rest of these revisions, and all these questions are going to get answered, but
Whole direction.
we'll have to wait and see.
Direction has been, you're going to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we'll provide you a little money.
Right.
Now, think, it's not just us. I mean, this is the whole country, and mostly in the Northeast and the old communities, communities that haven't built, that didn't build any lead lines because they weren't building houses in the 1940s and 30s and 20s. Well, we were. So we've got all this potential. That's a very large potential. And let's say it costs $125 million to do 5,000 homes or whatever the number it came to.
Yeah.
We'll give you $1 million, $2 million. How much are they going to give us?
Reportedly, right now, in New York State alone, there's 550,000 lead services across the state that have to get changed out.
Yeah.
Is there any way that they could put like maybe a smaller pipe within a 3/4 pipe, like a copper,
Not
running from
no.
one end to the other?
No, because you won't get the flow that you need in the house. Yeah, you just won't get the gallons per minute that you want.
It's terrible.
And you still got to be able to operate that shut-off valve, so you have to do it in sections anyway. And when you disturb the pipe, then
If
that's
the
when it
shut-off
starts
valve's not
leaking.
open, or
Yeah,
it won't go through the shut off valve if you're driving
Yeah.
from that end.
So I guess what we have to do is wait till the
We're
16th
going
of
to wait till the
October.
middle of October.
See what happens and
Get that.
and frankly, we got to wait for the election
Yes.
because whoever the new president is going to be, regardless of how the election goes, there's a review period they're entitled to. And some of these things might get rolled back. They might become more aggressive. We have to wait and see.
So October 16th, if you know what the
first rule.
mandates are.
We'll know at least what EPA is declaring. At least we're supposed to by that date. Who knows if they're going to make that date or not?
Then you have an idea what kind of numbers you're gonna be working with?
Not yet. No.
No. And
What
right
did,
now,
what did Syracuse release? How much was it that they?
I don't know. Jim, was that $24 million they plan to spend next year? I think to do like 1,200 services. Yeah. But they think they have 14,000 lead services they have to replace.
Wow.
So, but generally speaking, what we are expecting is we're going to be told, once we're told to start doing it, the generally accepted expectation is that we're going to have 10 years to do it.
Okay, well, look, I think
Yeah.
we'll have to wait till the 16th. We have a budget workshop coming up after this, so any old business? Any new business? No, that's it. Meeting's over.